Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride, and today we were talking about the Tactics ally, Rumil, who happens to be one of our favourite heroes' brothers, Aldia's brother. He's a 4-cost, 2 willpower, 2 attack power, 1 defense, 2 hit point ally, with the keyword range. He also has the trait of Silvan and Scout, and he has a response. After you play Rumil from your hand, choose an enemy engaged with a player, deal X damage to that enemy, where X is the number of ranged characters you control. So, David, what do you think of our ally here?
our best friend's brother here.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to know that certain cards only work really well in certain decks. And so Rumil is not quite that, but like we're spending some time lately talking about the Silvan allies and specifically cards that center around the Silvan deck that I put together that I just thought was really good. Stay tuned for Grant's deck after this one, but I think talking about Rumil, he actually can work in some other decks. But I think that in general, he's not a good choice of allies in a non-Silvan deck. He's got, he's 2 hit points. He has 2 attack, 2 will, and so like he's a good ally. He's not the best. Where I have found Rumil to work really, really well, and I will never not play him in a deck. And I only have 2 copies of him in this Slippery Silvan deck that we're looking at right now, is that I can bring him in and out of play with Thranduil's ability, or I can bring him into play using Thranduil's ability, reduced his cost by 1 using the Lorien, and then I'm doing damage equal to how many ranged characters that I have in play, including him. And that is powerful, especially in the endgame, because you can take Rumil, I don't know exactly how you pronounce it, but you can take him in and out of play and just do direct damage up the wazoo. There's 3 Galadon archers, there's 3 Greenwood archers, there's Orifin in the deck, so that's 7, plus Rumil is 8, plus Legolas is 9, plus Haldir is 10, so you can do up to 10 direct damage. As long as it's not immune to player card effects, you can put Rumil into play during the combat phase and just destroy enemies. And so this is really helpful at the end of those boss monster quests where you have to kill somebody who's not necessarily immune to player card effects. And so I can't tell you how many times I've put him into play using Thranduil's ability, pulled him back into my hand, even though he's expensive, pulled him back into my hand so that I could play him again. As long as you can keep picking him up and putting him down, you can do all sorts of damage with Rumil. He's more of a late game for me for this deck because he's just... because you have to set up your board to use him. I do bring him out because, having that, it's 2 willpower, but, sometimes, or with Celeborn boosting him, it's 3, and plus he's got 2 defense with Celeborn up to 3, so those things, not defense, but attack, those things are so helpful sometimes, because a lot of the Silvan allies are so kind of squishy. So, I love Rumil as a late game kill in this deck, but I don't think he's very good all the way, for all decks. What do you think, Grant?
I agree completely with what you're saying there, David. He's not a card that'll go in every deck. He'll go in some, especially if you have a lot of ranged characters. He becomes a little bit more viable. If you've got quick ways of dropping them in, likes of tree people and what have you. It's a lot better for him just to be dropped in like that. But paying 4 every time to pull him out, if you don't have a quick way of dropping him out, not really the best use of resources in my opinion. I haven't really used him a great deal. There's not much more to be said from my opinion. I like his artwork. I just love how he's drawn back that bow, getting ready to shoot an orc or shoot one of the fellowship while he's watching them, just in case they trespass and lost Lorien.
I can't overstate that in this little series that we're putting together, that we're trying to talk about a card within a certain deck, and so this is like the end game kill card. I'll sit and hold both copies of Rumil until the 7th or 8th round if I need to, and then I'll bring him out into play, and then I can do it a couple of times and kill something really quick. He's not an early game guy, even if you can reduce his cost down to 3 with Lorien, or even if you have Steward of Gondor. And with this deck that I'm running, his tactics, you have to cheat him into play using sneak attack, or you have to wait until Thranduil's combat action to get him out there. So it's not like you can, there's no Song of Battle in the deck to get him in. But what I know is that when he comes into play, I would say that that's probably the second biggest theme of the deck is ranged. And I am not playing this game 2 players or 3 players. I'm not using the ranged ability to attack people across the board. I'm using that ranged ability strictly to boost Rumil to be able to just snipe somebody when you bring him into play. And then there's so many ways to bring him back into your hand and then put him back into play. It's wild. So, because you can tree people him into your hand. You can use Island Amid Perils. You can use the Elven King. You can use all of those. You can bring him back, or if you tree people somebody, you can bring Rumil into play. Some other time, you can use tree people to bring him into play. So you can cheat him into play that way. I mean, it's just crazy to think about how powerful he gets. So I recommend people trying and hold on to him when you need to use his ability.
I'd agree with that assessment, David. I really would. So do you want to ring him?
Let's ring him. I can only say how awesome his ability is for so many minutes before we lose all our audience. So on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one ring to rule, or the one card to rule them all, and 10 is the trash heap. Grant, because we're doing something special with these, right? We're doing the
overall rating, and then we're doing rating within the deck itself.
Okay, so how would you ring him for both ways?
For overall rating, I'd give him a 5, because there are a lot more ranged cards outside of this Silvan trait that makes his ability that much more deadly, and I like him. Inside this deck, having only played him with him a few times, I'm going to give him a 4. Because of the fact that he's got that extra bit of punch that you can drop him in with, say, Thranduil's ability to deal that extra couple of points of damage and then use to attack. So that's my ratings. David, how about yourself?
Okay, so having played this, I guess there's going to be a theme in all these cards, is that I'm going to be very, I feel like the cards that aren't versatile don't get a really high rating from me. Although Rumil isn't necessarily a Silvan deck guy. He doesn't trigger off of Silvans coming in and out of play. So he's ranged. But I think if you're not setting up for Rumil, it's not a
viable choice.
Yeah, he's not really a good choice. And I think there's a lot of good ways in tactics to get a better card than him. So I would guess that, the overall like ring rating for him outside of the Silvan deck, I think is for me, it's got to be at least a 7, maybe an 8. So
which one are you going with?
I'll say a 7.
All right.
But within but within the deck, I just think that because the deck is secondarily built around him to have all those archery ranged characters into play, including his brother and Legolas, and he really becomes super powerful. He's like Gandalf level. So I have to give him a 2 within this deck. He's not somebody that I'm ever going to take out of the deck. I'm always going to keep building around him. So join us next time as we talk about more cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube, where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username Card Talk 2018. Or you can search the RSS feed, cardtalk2018.libsyn.org, for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at Card Talk 2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself, or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.